And also, this meeting is being recorded. There you go. Please mute yourself. I think we all know kind of the Zoom rules and all that. Everybody's been doing this for so long now. I don't think anybody's name is showing up as Robin. Sometimes that's a thing. So I think we're good there. Before I get into introducing Noemi, I'm just going to talk about our sponsors for a minute. There they are. Sarasota Chamber is one of our sponsors. The Greater Sarasota Chamber of Commerce is a bridge that links businesses, organizations, and residents with innovative programs that strengthen Sarasota's economic vitality and quality of life. And Williams Parker is the other sponsor. Williams Parker Attorneys at Law, they are committed to clients, service to community, and devotion to excellence in the practice of law, guiding principles for nearly 100 years. Awesome, thank you. So Noemi Perez is our host today. Thank you again, Noemi, for doing this. Noemi is president and CEO of the Immokalee Foundation, which is a 30-year-old nonprofit in Immokalee with 100% focus on education and professional development. The foundation offers students the tools, opportunities, and support they need to succeed at each level of their education, whether they choose college, technical programs, or certifications that lead to financial independence. I've gotten to know Noemi a little bit. She was in our 40 Under 40 issue last year. And two things I think are worth saying that really stand out. One, I think you could say this about a lot of nonprofit leaders, but Noemi really lives and breathes the passion for the Immokalee Foundation. In a 45-minute Zoom call with her, I got that right from the beginning and all the way through. And I was, as a reporter, it's fun to hear people's passion for what they believe in and then write that in a story. So I was impressed with that. And the other thing I was super impressed with was when doing our research on 40 Under 40, Noemi has a really big fan club in Naples. Having not known her before, we get our 40 Under 40 nominations, and I'll call people that I do, hey, Noemi, she's got to be in the issue. She has to be in that issue. So I'm wondering if some of those fans are on this call. I hope they are, but you get to know Noemi a little bit in a second. Again, the book is Identity Leadership by Stedman Graham. There's a good thing about the book club is I keep learning new things and hearing about new books. I had never heard of this book, and got it the day after Noemi agreed to do this. Yes. And I really enjoyed reading it. And I think hopefully you guys have as well. So Noemi, I'm going to let you take it from here. And I have a poll question. Do you want to talk first, or do I throw the poll question up?
I want to talk first and then throw it up.
All right, let's do it.
So thank you. Thank you first to Business Observer, Mark, and your team for inviting me. I mean, I'm really excited about this. There's a part of me that just is honored at times whenever, I'm asked to do, things like this. And reading is one of my passions. Learning is one of my passions. And, often people know this about me, is that leadership is one of the key things that I'm always interested to learn more about. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for everyone who's taking their time out, their hour and this late in the day to join me and participate in this conversation. So I do want to start with saying that I want it to be interactive. I don't want to be the only one talking. I can fill up some air, but I don't think that that's the purpose for this open book event. So please feel free to ask questions. I will, ask a few poll questions to get to know the audience and how much you've learned, and if you've had a chance to read the book as well. So I want to go into why I chose this book. And as I mentioned, I've always been passionate about leadership, but also my own professional and personal growth. And that stems from really, I'm going to talk about my story and where I grew up. And then you'll get an understanding as to why I'm constantly seeking and wanting to learn more and more. The book, the title was one that really intrigued me when I heard of it, and it was introduced to me by one of my colleagues, which is Randy. He's on the call here with us, and he said, you know, I've read this book, and I think that you should read it. I think that you'll love it, and it's Identity Leadership. And of course, you know, I gravitated to that. He told me a little bit about the author, but the tagline really stood out to me. And you know, part of it is Stedman says, to lead others, you must first lead yourself. And that's very interesting to me. And I think I've heard it here and there when people have said it, but it never really stood out to me until, you know, I saw it in the book, and then, you know, beginning to read part of Stedman's story. So before I go into the book, I do want to share a little bit about my story and my background, so you can get some context on why certain things stood out to me within the book. But the first poll, and Mark, if you're ready to throw that out there, is I want to know how many of you are familiar with or have visited Immokalee, Florida. And I'm waiting to see.
Did the poll launch,
Thoughts?
Mark?
It did. There's
Oh.
a couple more people voting.
Okay. As the host, you cannot see the poll, which I don't understand, Zoom. Thanks.
It's like giving me second count. All right, we got almost everybody voted, it looks like. I don't know, did the results show up?
I haven't seen them yet.
Oh, wait, because I got to share them. That's why.
Here we go. Yeah. So great. 75% have visited or are familiar with Immokalee. So for the 25% who don't know about Immokalee, I'm going to share a little bit about it. First of all, I was raised in this small town. It is an agricultural community with a population of about 25,000 residents. Many of the residents migrated here from other countries to give their families a better opportunity. Many of these parents who migrated here were very similar to my very own parents. More than half of the school-age children who live in Immokalee, they live at or below the poverty level. 38% of the residents who are over 25 years of age have graduated with a high school diploma, and only 6% have graduated from college. So that kind of gives you an idea of the community. And so growing up in this small town, I wasn't really given the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different things outside what I call the bubble. I only saw, you know, what I saw day in and out was my parents, you know, working hard to provide for me and my family. Also the parents of other friends that I had around. So for us, you know, growing up, high school graduation was a big deal. That was a huge accomplishment. And that was something that you work hard towards if you could, because many of the students did not have the opportunity to continue on because they had other responsibilities, and most of it was financial responsibility. So once you were able to pretty much walk and lift 25 pounds, you were sent out to work and help the family because putting food on the table was essential, and it was very important. So many of my friends and the students that I went to school with, they did graduate high school, but there wasn't a lot of talk about going off to college. There was more of the talk of, you know, let's graduate and then where are you going to work? And there wasn't, you know, too much or too many opportunities in Immokalee. But in this book, Stedman describes his own personal story in chapter 2. And so, you know, he talks about himself and being raised in a household with 6 children. His father was a painter. worked many jobs, a carpenter, and then his mom also was a house cleaner and a nurse's aide. So he goes off, on and he says something that just hit home to me. And he says, he grew up in Whitesboro, New Jersey, and he says the talk was nothing good ever comes out of Whitesboro, and how that stung, and I think to this day, he probably still has that in the back of his mind. And but he used that as the ammo to motivate himself to, push further. And that really stuck out to me. And when I read that, I said, oh yeah, this is a book for me, because I could relate and I could connect with him. And so many times that we read a book or we pick up a book on leadership or personal development, I've never really connected with an author that way. And so it was very exciting to me to continue on. As I mentioned, myself growing up in a small town, often the questions that I would ask myself were, where am I going to go? What am I going to be? What's my purpose? What good can I do coming from such a small town? What is out there? So I feel that, if I have these questions, the students that we serve most likely have these same questions as well. And so the key thing for me in reading this book was when he talks about finding your own identity, it's much more than that. It's finding your identity so that you can reach that full potential. So before I continue on, I do have 2 poll questions that I want to ask, and maybe it'll give me an idea of, the audience here. So second question is, how many of you have read Identity Leadership by Stedman Graham? Okay, not too many, but that's okay. Hopefully after this, you will be intrigued to read it.
And I forgot to vote. I did read it, but I forgot to vote. So.
Okay, well, that increases the percentage some. Question number 3, how many of you are using today's discussion to determine if you are going to read it? Let's see what we get. We go from here. Oh, people are still thinking, huh? So, okay, so there's a majority says yes. So that's a good thing. Well, I hope that you do pick it up after, after this Zoom. One of the other things that was very intriguing to me was, I'm an individual that loves to be challenged, and the book really challenged me in a way to really dig down deep and ask those uncomfortable questions. Stedman puts in a lot of different exercises and worksheets and questions that really make you think, and not about anybody else, but about yourself. And, like I mentioned before, so many other books have only kind of geared you and talked about certain topics, but a lot of them will ask you things about like your coworkers and how would you do this and how would you do that. But this really talks and asks you the questions about who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. And those are 3 top questions that Stedman continuously asks in the book. So it gets you to think as you're reading. And as I mentioned, these questions are questions that will change, I think, throughout our journeys and wherever we go. I know that often a lot of times adults, we don't even know who we are. Our identity is lost in so many ways because of the group of people that we, congregate with, or where we work, or, there's just so many scenarios that happen where, ourselves, it just has such an impact on who we are. And so coming from a small town myself, and as I mentioned, my story along the way was, I hoped and I wish that I had this book 10 years ago, because I went through so many things that this book would have helped me with. Especially because knowing your identity, and it just builds a certain type of confidence. So I want to share now, and I want to ask the audience, if those of you who have read the book, if you wouldn't mind sharing, maybe a piece of where you felt, did it challenge you? And if so, explain, whether it was the exercises or just anything else within the book that you felt that challenge. I know there's not many that read it, so. And I don't know who read it or who did it, so I can't call on you. No? What about you, Mark? Did you get to a point where you felt?
Yeah, I thought for me the biggest thing, I guess I almost took more of it out of it as sort of a parent, as much as a leader, but especially in terms of, I don't know if I say, like, you're always on. I guess you're always on as a leader too, but that was my sort of takeaway, was, trying to do the right thing. And, I'm very close with my son, and he's 13 and at an age where he's very impressionable on things and social media and all that stuff. And so I don't know if this really answers the question, but yeah, I think that's what I took out of it, like what kind of parent I want to be and how I'm doing. And I'm neurotic anyway as a parent, so I'm constantly thinking, like, is this the right thing to do, and things like that. So it certainly made me think about that, kind of expand my horizon, I guess, on how I think about that.
Yeah, and you're right. It does, not just for leaders, it's for students. And I know Stedman talked about, he does a training with all sorts of different age groups. And because it is one of the things that is very important, because you do, as I mentioned, it depends on where you are. You feel like you have to be a certain way to reach a certain goal. And that's not so. You yourself are unique, and you have strengths and you have skill sets that can help, get you to that point. So one of the exercises that I completed was on page 80, and it was the 54 attributes of identity leaders. And I was a little nervous going into this. And so if you do decide to read the book and get the book, please, complete this exercise. And the reason I was nervous is because I'm very critical of myself, and I never give myself enough credit. So when I went through it and I saw, some of the things that they were asking, I kind of had to sit back and really evaluate myself and say, okay, right now, it's not about, certain people saying that you're good at this. It's where you feel, where you stand, and how, and what you're going to rate yourself. So I was really surprised with my score. It was a 274. And so he gives you ranges like average, above average, and then excellent. So my score did come in at leadership skills were excellent. But I still, even seeing that, I still felt like, oh, no, I still have room to grow. And so I'm going to take that more as a guide than anything else. But the lowest scores that I had were, and where I rated myself much lower, were communications and a fear of making mistakes. And The reason being is because I feel that communication as a leader is very important, but I don't feel that you ever really perfect it, because people communicate in so many different ways and you have to adapt in so many different ways. So for me to say that I'm a perfect communicator, I know I'm not. And, communication just, look at us now today. We're communicating through technology, so it's different. Some people aren't as comfortable, some people are. And so that's where, that was one that I said, okay, I have to think about this. The second one was fear of making mistakes. And I never really, I guess it's one of those things that I always feel I question myself on, because other people have said you're a perfectionist, and I never believed it. But, just kind of looking back at scenarios and things like that, I am quite the perfectionist, and I do fear making mistakes. And so it's odd, because although I fear making mistakes, I tell my team and other people it's okay to make mistakes. So, it's one of those areas that I know I have to work on within myself. Anyone here that read the book, went through that exercise, or took a stab at it that maybe wants to share their scores? Randy?
I did do this. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I did it, and I obviously I introduced you to the book. The first thing I had to do, because I would like to see everybody read this book when you're done. I think it's extraordinary. What I had to do is I had to adjust to the fact that you're told not to write in a book, and it's a big workbook. And so you're like, oh my, I can't write in this. I can't write in this. So what I did, being type A, is I made copies. So I didn't actually have to. So I'm going to, if you make the excuse that I can't write in the book, so I'm not going to do it, you can make copies. I did the 54 attributes of identity leaders. Okay, here's what's interesting. I gave myself a 2 on do not fear mistakes. And that's a high score for me. I'm really a 1. I'm actually terrified of mistakes. And I am a very impatient person masquerading as a patient one. So I gave myself a low score. My total score, though, on this was only 212. I really held back on the higher scores because I believe that I'm still trying to get there. But I don't think, now I am not going to disagree with Stedman, and I actually think he would probably love what I'm going to do with it. I'm having somebody else do it on my behalf. And I'm having Melissa, who's in the room, do it because she knows me professionally probably better than anybody. And I think it'd be really interesting for her to score this. So where I was too hard on myself, I can kind of see an aggregate, and I think that'll be really interesting. But yeah, I did that. But for anybody who's going to read the book and is afraid to write the book because we're told we're not supposed to, you can just photocopy and you're good to go. But yeah, it was cool. It's very eye-opening to look at yourself critically. And I think it's fun. It's eye-opening and very fun.
Yeah. Anyone else? Just given the fear of mistakes, want to comment? Is that something that you feel that you have to work on? Or are you a risk taker and doesn't bother you?
Well, I think it's some of us that are on this call that if you're in journalism and media, and like Randy has done a lot of writing and stuff, we're really paranoid about making mistakes. Because everybody looks at what we do, and if the period or the comma is in the wrong spot, you made a big mistake. So I think all of us, especially myself, I'm always so paranoid about, oh, is that right? Should I have changed this? I always second guess myself, and it makes me crazy.
How have you felt, Robin, when you have made a mistake like that?
I feel terrible. Everybody knows it that I work with. They'll be like, oh my God, I made the biggest mistake. And, the paper comes out the next day or in the next week, and you can fix it and stuff. But no, you don't want to make mistakes. I think we're all brought up to like, you're supposed to be right. And you're supposed to get it right the first time. And you have to give yourself a break, And I still haven't gotten good at it. I'm like, I don't like to make mistakes.
Anyone else?
I was going to say the opposite. Noemi and I work well together because we're very opposite in a lot of ways. I like to take a lot of risk, sometimes too quickly. I don't really have a fear of making mistakes because I know my intention is pure and that I'm trying to do the best for my colleagues and my family and so forth. And I know that nothing I do is going to be terribly detrimental to someone or that I can't fix it. So I like to lead by telling my team to take risks, to push, to think outside of the box, don't always ask, and to really try to think of new ways and new improved ways to do them. And then if they make a mistake, it's a great learning opportunity because you have to learn to pivot and reevaluate what you're doing. So it's a constant learning. So I always say, don't rethink it, don't overthink it, let it go. Let's move on. Let's take a risk, throw it out there and see what happens. So it's very interesting. I mean, it's not that I want to just be a bull in a china shop, but I also don't want to get in my own head to where I'm following people. I like to be a leader. I like to be the first at the table. I don't want to follow what someone else is doing. And if I overthink it too much, or I start sort of talking myself out of an idea, people are going to run past me. And I don't like that. So I would be a polar opposite. But I have Noemi who helps me. So when I do make a mistake, she's like, wait a minute. She's always the end proofer of everything. So.
Anyone else? We did have someone in the chat. Is it Anishli? She says, I used to be more fearful of making mistakes, but when I started managing, I observed myself giving such grace to these good employees, and I decided to extend that to myself. Yeah. I need to work on that for sure. But that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. You got to dig deep, and this is what it's about, figuring out your own identity. One of the other areas that was very, very just eye-opening to me was, Stedman breaks down the book and he talks about not only the need for identity, but what identity leaders are, their attributes, and then he goes on to start working on personal development. And then he gives you the 9 steps, and there's more exercises on that. So one of the areas was in the section in chapter 6, it was labeled the personal development advantage. And so in this section, it's more about, of course, personal development. And he talks about, in this area, this is what leaders can do, these identity leaders. And it's, care for and love yourself, break the mindset of poverty, believe in yourself, shun external labels, remain motivated, build your brand, build a foundation for continuous improvement, create a pathway to freedom, define and find success for yourself, and then build a life around what you enjoy and live a life with purpose. So the reason why this stood out to me was because there was 3 areas that really had me sit back and kind of evaluate my own self and why those 3 kind of hit home for me. And the first one was care for and love yourself. And I think that a lot of times, especially with, where we are today in the world and with social media and all sorts of things happening, you kind of get in your own mind and it's easy for you to not take care of yourself, to take care of others and not really have, as Ashnia mentioned, grace on your own self. And so that's something that you continuously work on. But the second one was breaking the mindset of poverty. And for me, growing up in a small town, that was very hard for me to overcome. And I think sometimes even for myself, and I shouldn't say think, I know, that starts to creep up as you feel as if you don't deserve that seat at the table. you know, what are you doing? You shouldn't be there. You're not good enough. Things like that start to really just creep up. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of remove that because you see and you're around so many other individuals who are much more intelligent, who went to Harvard, who, you know, did all of these great things. And here I am, my own non-traditional pathway, sitting and rubbing elbows with these individuals. So that was, you know, the second one. But the third one was, and it kind of goes hand in hand with that second one, was shunning the external labels. And, you know, in sharing my personal story and growing up in the small town, there's a lot of good that came out of it because I, you know, determined, motivated, resilient, all of these different things that were instilled in me. But there were people who attached labels to me. And the reason I say that is because my story, as I mentioned, is not traditional. I didn't, you know, graduate high school, go to college, live a life in college, you know, majored in something and then found a career. No, I was, you know, went to high school, was a teen mom, I was a teen wife. I, you know, graduated high school, but then I went into the workforce. I worked hard. I, you know, got my college degree while I was, you know, a mother, worked full time. It's not as traditional as, you know, other people have gone through. And so a lot of what I was labeled was I was another statistic. You know, you chose a certain path, and so there's no success for you. And so those things are things that I think even today, when I meet people and when I say, you know, I'm from Immokalee, or, you know, where's that? I don't know where that is. Or, you know, when we talk about my own story, it is something that I can feel that is still there. So I just felt like that was so great because, again, I've never seen this in any other professional or personal development book. So with that, for those of you who, I know we don't have many that have read the book, are there things that, you know, even with me sharing what I shared, could you relate to that? Are there other things that I listed that kind of stood out to you? I see Randy nodding his head.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sorry, Siri's talking to me.
So Noemi, you know, I read sort of the cliff notes to the book. I didn't read the book. I've read many books like this, but I do like the book because it talks more personally about your identity, what your purpose is, the kinds of things that I've been thinking about since I was about 5. And I know I'm very different and unique for most people because I tend to reflect constantly on what's going on around me. And I've tried to rein that in a bit. But having said that, I like the fact that the book allows you to do that. And it allows you to figure out how what he has to say applies to your specific situation. And I do find that, you know, my experience as I've gone through life, and I think I have a kind of a different story as well. As we experience more things, as we challenge ourselves a little bit more, I've always been kind of like, I don't like a box. I don't like to be categorized. I don't like to be told what to do. I like to make up my own rules and figure out what makes sense. But always top of mind for me is, who can I help? How can I affect a positive change and do something? And maybe do it in a way that no one even knows I've done a thing. You know, I actually enjoy doing that for people as well. They don't even know I was involved or did anything. But the identity piece I really like, because I think that's a lifelong journey. We're constantly trying to figure out who we are, what is our identity, what do we want that to look like for us, what is a fulfilling life looking like. So I like the fact that he kind of dives a bit deeper and brings up things, and it's like, hey, it's okay to think about this stuff and discuss it and challenge yourself regularly. And it's nice to be able to read it in a book that's concise.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, he does such a great job. Like I said, he really outlines the book to help you along the way. One of the other areas that again just spoke to me during these times was in chapter 14. He talks about different steps that identity leaders go through. And one of them was piloting seasons of change. And so that again resonates so deeply with me because look where we're at today and a year ago with COVID. And so for me as a leader and running an organization, educational organization in my community, a lot of what we do is in person and is hands-on training. And so how do we shift and how do we pivot to continue to provide these resources? Because it wasn't a question that we weren't going to do it. It was a question of how. And one of the things that, we sort of as a team came together and we said, we're going to focus on the things that we can do, not the things we can't do. And so we quickly adapted, we shifted, we, threw everything on technology. Thank goodness for technology. It could be a curse and a good thing, at the same time, but we were able to stay connected to our students. And that was important to us. It was important to our organization and everything that we do. But as a leader, you kind of sit there and, I reached out to other leaders similar to what we do and others who were in different sectors. And they didn't know what to do either because it was so new to all of us. And so in those moments, Stedman talks about we grow through the change, we grow through the challenges. And I grew. I feel like I grew every week because it was everything changed minute by minute. And a lot of what we're good at with planning ahead, we weren't able to do in those moments. And so we also took it as we have to set that example for others. And I think as identity leaders, you often continue to have that in the back of your mind is not only are you doing things for you, but you're also doing things to set an example, whether it's for your team or the people you serve or your kids or whoever it is that's around you. You are that example and they're looking to you. So is there anyone else who can share, change that you've gone through and how it challenged you, how it changed you, how different it was for you?
I found this on the web.
No one? It's been perfect.
I'll speak up. So change, growing up in Immokalee, right? And then we had to move out of Immokalee. And, your whole identity when, like you're saying, is I'm from Immokalee. That's my community. That's my family. That's my, and that's how I identified myself. So now it's like, okay, almost felt like an outsider in my community, even though if you ask me right now, I'm going to tell you I'm from Immokalee. Like, I forget sometimes that I don't live there anymore. So trying to find your identity outside of that label that you've given yourself or others have given you, or that's been a little difficult, trying to figure out, okay, who am I now?
Anyone else on seasons of change or how you've grown through that? Because I think sometimes you also learn your identity within those changes too and challenges.
I'll speak up. I will say I just recently became a mom too this past year. And I honestly felt like within this past year, I've dealt with like a big crisis where it just felt like, who am I? I have 2 boys, wild as can be at home. So there are times where my husband, he's just like, babe, you need to go and be alone. And during that time of being alone, I literally have to reflect, like, who am I? What am I supposed to do with all this alone time? So it's been a real big change going from being a mom of one, you're still able to be, social, go out, handle one kid versus two kids where you can't go anywhere because you can't manage both of them at the same time. So honestly, I will say that being thankful for friends who have kids and understand, like when I say, hey, I need a day, and we group together and, we can reflect as to, what we used to be and who we're becoming. And I will say now, as a mom of two, I've become more responsible. I've become more manageable. I've become new things that I wasn't in the past. And I'm just learning how I'm learning how to take those new skills onto another level. So definitely, I completely understand the question as to, who am I now versus who I was then.
Yeah, and I think it changes, as we go through our journey, because you're right, Marissa, who I was 10 years ago isn't who I am today. And a lot of that stems from understanding who you are. And, Stedman is so good at, again, continuing to ask you, who are you? What makes you tick? What's your passion? Because in those moments, no one, doesn't matter who's in the room or who you're speaking to, will change your mindset or will change your belief or change, what it is about you that makes you unique. And I think that all of us have gone through those moments where we are in a room and where we feel that we have to, again, act a certain way, talk a certain way, be a certain way, dress a certain way, in order to, meet a goal. And you lose your identity, you lose who you are. And I think for me with this book too, I a lot of it was not just, thinking about myself, yes, and challenging and growing within, but also the students that we serve and those that I'm just so passionate about helping. And so when I talk about, breaking the poverty mindset, it's, okay, how do we, in our organization, break the cycle of poverty? That's always constant on the forefront of my mind is, how do we do that? How do we do it better for them? How do I do it better for them? And that's, where I know that I have found my calling, because years ago, I was kind of floating in different areas and thinking, this is where I'm supposed to be. No, this is where I'm supposed to be. No, that looks neat. This is where I'm supposed to be. And today, I know, this is where, this is my purpose, and this is the love, and this is what I'm called here, and my purpose here in this world. So overall, for me, it hit, like, as I mentioned, a lot of different areas. It reminded myself to continuously go back and ask those questions. Don't lose yourself. Giving back to my community, I know, is number one. It's key. It's what I love to do. It's what I will work, day in and day out. I also have a love for learning. I constantly want to grow and learn. Not only do I challenge myself, but I love to have different projects going. Not only do I, run an organization, nonprofit organization, but I also run a construction business with my husband. So there's so many things that I love to see. But one of the things is, for me, is seeing growth and helping others, and whether that's our students and giving them opportunity and training and scholarships and mentoring, or, with our family business and helping families, purchase a home or, fix up a home and help them in that sense. That's, I know, my passion, and that's my love, and that's what drives me. A few other things that I saw was, I need to continue to allow myself the freedom and the time to grow, because I don't know it all. And that was one area that, coming into leadership positions, that I think we all kind of hit in that area, is we feel like we have to know it all, and you don't. It's okay. It's okay not to know it all. It's okay to be confident. But also, one last thing is realizing that identity leaders impact the world wherever they are. So you don't have to be a top level person. You don't have to be this famous individual. you can do it anywhere. And people will see that and people will gravitate to that. One of the last things that I want to mention is, Stedman talks about a journey in this time when he was working at the jail. I think it was at the prison. And he had this just awful job that nobody really wanted. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want you to go back and read the book. But he did this job day in and day out, and he hated it. And then he just sat back and said, I'm going to change my attitude. I'm going to be much more positive about this. And I know I don't like it, but I'm going to do the best job that I can do because I'm here and I'm going to be grateful and I'm just going to go for it. And through that, people saw him that his attitude had changed. He loved what he was doing when he truly didn't, but they gave him opportunity. And that's the other area is our attitude is so huge and so big. And that's what really connects to who we are as, or to our identity. So it's very intriguing, very interesting, that story that he shares about himself. And then to see him and see what he's doing now is remarkable. So one of the last polls that I have, I talked a little bit about the organization that, I work with and what we do. So we serve about 1,400 students in Immokalee, ranging from kinder all the way to post-secondary into their career. And when we talk about change and pivoting, we've really changed how we are educating and training students for their career into financial independence. So it's remarkable. 100% of our students graduate from high school, 100% have a career plan when they graduate high school, and then 92% of our students graduate from post-secondary. So we have such a great organization, and I'm so happy to be a part of that change. But how many of you would be interested in visiting our website, which is ImmokaleeFoundation.org, to learn more about the community that I'm passionate about and why and how you'll see how this book resonated with me. People still thinking. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again. Are there any questions for me? Anything else that maybe you want me to kind of talk a little bit more about the book? We have like 5 minutes left. No? Okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you to Mark and his team for the opportunity. This has been fun, but again, I hope that you do take some time to read the book, let it challenge you. I think you'll find it very interesting. And Stedman as an interesting individual too, finding his own identity, even though he's the spouse of Oprah Winfrey, which everyone knows and adores. That was kind of neat too, and how he talked about finding his identity in that too. So thank you again. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Noemi.
I agree. It's definitely a self-reflective book, so take the time to read it. It's pretty interesting. Please, we got another book club coming up November 3rd. More information on that on our email and social media channels. And if you haven't already signed up for the Business Observer's daily email blast, please go to businessobserverfl.com to sign up for that. Thanks, Noemi, again. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I know it's raining in Sarasota, so have a good dry rest of your day wherever you are. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.